this is Chris from Clever Unicorn Games and the Unicorn Collective, conducting one of our new interviews for our new show. And today we have David Digby, board game designer, rulebook editor, and fount of all board game knowledge. Hi, David. How are you doing today?
Hello. Yes, I'm good. Thanks, Chris.
So let's start off with something about yourself. What is it you like to do as a person when you're not playing a board game around a table?
So my hobbies outside board gaming are pretty much all sport based. I coach cricket. I coach the first team now for my local village club, and I coach the under 15s and under 18s sections for North Essex. So a lot of my time is spent doing that. I also play golf most weekends. So once we're out of lockdown, I'll be back out on the golf course.
Yeah, I tried golf once. Well, I played a few times. A few. It was getting too costly in the amount of balls that I was losing. So many
You,
ghosts. There's ghost bushes in Northern Ireland where I used to live, full of my golf balls still, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's two holes on my home course where there is farmers' fields down the right hand side, and they've got plenty of my golf balls in, I'm sure.
So, I mean, you've been doing this quite a while now, haven't you? Designing board games and helping edit rule books. What what is your favorite game?
I'm going to cheat slightly with this question and split it into two parts. Why not? There's no rules; I can break them. So, favorite game, just the whole game, is going to be. Can I do it? That one, which would be A Feast for Odin.
Yeah, good choice. I really
Um,
like Feast for.
it's a game that I can play at any player count, solo, all the way up to maximum players, and I'll have a brilliant time with it. I love teaching it. I love playing it with people that know how to play it. So that's to me is my favourite game. But the sub part of my answer would also go to favourite gaming experience, because I think that's a slightly different thing, and that's going to be that one, which is Gloomhaven. Um, as a game, it's not as good if you just play it once, but the ability to get a group of friends around regularly, play the campaign, explore all the story, as well as all the mechanisms that are within that game that make it the sort of more Euro experience. For me, makes that my favourite gaming experience. With Feast for Odin as the favourite just game.
Yeah, Feast for. I've not had a chance to play the new expansion. Was it Norway
Yeah,
expansion yet? We've got it on the shelf. I've just not because the lockdown happened. It's sitting on the shelf at the office, ready to be played. But I've not had a chance yet. But yeah, Feast for Odin. Yeah, definitely one of my favorite worker placement games.
yeah. A lot of people say that once they've played with Norwegians, they never want to go back to the base game. I don't prescribe to that. I think that they're basically two versions of the same game, and it just gives you an optional sort of way of playing it. I think both have their merit. The original is a little bit tighter. Um, the Norwegian's expansion kind of rebalances a few things, but I still love the original worker placement system as well as the change system in Norwegian. So I think there's time for both.
So worker placement would you say was probably your favorite mechanic?
It's certainly up there. Yeah. It's the planning and replanning that I kind of enjoy, particularly about that. It's the balance between strategy and tactics. Strategy being when you sit down at the table and you learn the game, or you know the game already, and you go, "This is what I'd like to do during this game." And then the tactics is that they've done that, and now that's not the optimal move for me to do. Worker placement offers that balance between strategy and tactics, which for me is kind of a sweet spot.
What would you say would be a game that made you decide, oh, you know what, I can have a go at this. I'm going to design some games myself. What was it do you think that pushed you into becoming a board game designer?
It very much came from playtesting. When I retired from playing cricket, I decided I was going to throw myself more into my board gaming hobby, and I just sort of started volunteering via Facebook groups and things to do playtesting for games that were being designed. And I hooked up with a few that were in early stages. and that process just got a different bit of my brain firing, in terms of, actually how creatively would you solve this problem. And then my first board game design came out of, um, a wind up type long running joke at work, where we were doing Snow White and the Seven Dwarves as our pantomime at work. I work in theatre; that's my profession. And the dwarf illustrations that the guys in marketing had done looked a lot like gnomes. So I was constantly teasing them about the fact that they were gnomes and what dwarves would really be doing, rather than excuse me, rather than doing panto stuff. And just one long drive home, uh, I ended up thinking about, well, what would dwarves really be doing? And a few hours later, I'd sketched up a rough design for a dice placement based Euro game on the real life of the seven dwarves from the fairy story. So that's kind of where it all started.
And where's that game now? Because that sounds amazing.
Yeah. Sadly, that's now in a couple of boxes upstairs, up in the prototype area. For a few reasons, I don't think it's a viable product. I think I've learnt enough now about the industry to know that, despite the fact that's a solid game and perfectly playable, for someone to publish that, it's not a good enough product, even though it's a fairly good fun game to play. But it's not good enough to cut the mustard at a published level.
And I think that's what we find out when we've been in this industry for at least a short while, is you start to understand, especially you get to the point where you're taking them out and showing people sell sheets and that you start to understand that yes, some of your some of your ideas, especially with mine, yeah, probably just leave them at home.
Yeah.
When coming up with a game, where would you start? Do you start with the theme or mechanics, or what gets you started off on a new game?
I tend to have a number of different mechanisms, jotted down in my notebooks, that are just completely disjointed. So there'll be an idea in there for, oh, I want a dice drafting system where the color of the dice changes your position on a relative track, and that you need to balance the different colors overall. So it's just a rough idea for a mechanism, and there'll be plenty of those just sitting about on a page in my notebook, and they have no real home. But when they start to form a design is when I find a theme that appeals, or a story that I can tell that brings those mechanisms together, and suddenly it all makes sense. So I might have a card drafting system, and with using multi-use cards, and until I can find the right theme for it, or the right story I want to tell with it, it pulls it all together, and then that theme or story helps me then refine the game into something that becomes a proper prototype. You always question back to the theme of the game. Well, actually, if this game is set, if it's the seven dwarfs from the fairy story, what's the realistic answer to that? What's the thematic solution? And that then helps you make the decision that forms the game from those sort of base mechanical ideas.
I mean, you've probably played a lot of games. Have there ever been, and you don't have to name them, have there ever been any games where you've played it and just thought, yeah, that's not for me? And what is it that, the kind of mechanics in those games that really turned you off?
Yeah, there's loads. um, I'm I'm uh, I'm quite fussy in terms of the sort of games that I enjoy playing. There are loads of mechanisms that I don't enjoy, from a personal point of view. So blind bidding, auctions, bluffing, um, you know, sort of the very social, light party game type things. None of those I particularly enjoy. But I will still play as many games as I can from as many genres as possible, um, as a kind of, from a sort of professional standpoint, because I think you can learn from everything, and I think that's where the innovation comes from. If you play a light social deduction party game, something in that game might fire off a thought in your mind that you can then apply to your dice placement worker placement game that makes that game stand out from everything else in that genre. If I only played the games I enjoyed, I'd have a very narrow library of information.
No, no, I think you're right there. I very rarely will say no to trying a game, even if it has got the things in there that I'm not interested in. Yeah, you have to try these things out, don't you?
Yeah, I always say I'll play anything once, and there's thousands of games I won't play a second time.
Why? What is it that makes you want to design games? What is it that you're kind of aiming for with the games that you're designing?
It's just it's an extended part of the hobby, really. I think it's just something that sort of comes to me and is how I naturally work. I'm very keen to push myself and see how much I can achieve at a certain thing. So going from playing cricket, I then went into coaching cricket. From coaching 6, 7 year old kids, just having fun. I've then built up all the way up to coaching, guys that are looking into county programs at 14, 15 years of age. So it's kind of that ambition and that drive just to see how far I can get. And I feel like within board games, I'm still pushing. Um, I've still not got my name on the front of a box yet. I've still not had something that I've designed on my own. Obviously, with a lot of playtesting and a lot of help along the way, but something that's kind of my creation that's come to market in some way, shape, or form. So I've still got so much further I can go, and I'll just keep pushing and until it either happens or it doesn't. Um, I'm not looking to make a living out of it, so I have the freedom to be able to just sort of pour time into it and see where it goes. Basically, I think that's just a personality type thing.
So, David, what are you working on right now?
So at the moment, from my own design point of view, I've got 3 different prototypes that I'm working on. One of which is designed as a spiritual sequel for a game that's already published. So that's got quite a specific brief. The other just designs of my own creation. I've then got another 3 designs that I feel are ready to go to publishers. So they're just sort of sitting on a workbench somewhere, ready to get in front of the right people. And then I've got 2 solo modes that will be coming out this year. So they're already designed. Eternal Palace for Alley Cat Games and Scrumpy for Paul Frosendorf Harris over at Invincible Games. There's a couple more as well that I've been in touch with the designers or the publishers about designing those. So they may well hit the market this year at some point. Then development project wise, I've got all the stuff that I do for Alley Cat. I've been doing a lot of work on the Roman Roll expansion with David Turtsey and Nick Shaw. And there's a couple of other projects as well on the horizon on the development front, including one that's a brand new edition of an older game with a sort of makeover type style. That's quite an exciting project if that comes out. And then I'm doing some rulebook editing, working for Jordan Draper, Lucky Duck Games, and AEG. I think the other ones for.
So your hands are full.
Yes, very very much managed taking advantage of lockdown and being in the position where I can't go to work. I'm filling all of my time doing board game stuff instead. I'm very lucky on that front.
So, from the time that you've been doing it, what would be your main piece of advice for somebody who's watching this and thinking, you know what, I'm going to have a go at designing a game?
I think for me, it's trying to absorb as much information as possible, and that falls into a lot of sort of subcategories. It's about playing as many games as you can. It's researching as many games as you can. So watching playthrough videos, reading reviews, looking at the BGG pages. Certainly, when you're thinking about designing something, doing a lot of cross referencing. So if you're designing uh, let's get to go back to a space themed card drafting game where you need to look at every game that's space themed and every game that's card drafting, and kind of make sure that you're finding the right product niche for things like that. So yeah, and then it's researching themes. So if it's a particularly thematic game, make sure that it's accurate. If you're doing a historic game, it's doing all the historic research. And then it's kind of just listening to advice, and everything that people tell you. The board game industry and the community is incredibly helpful, at helping each other out. There's none of this, I'm going to keep this information to myself, I'm not going to share it. All the people I've had the pleasure of meeting through cons or through Facebook groups will always be very free with advice and information. So I would say just absorb all of that information as much as you can, and just the little nuggets will pop up every now and again, and you remember, oh yeah, so and so said that that might be an interesting idea, and then you're able to apply that to your own work.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to me today, David.
No problem. Thank you, Chris. It's been good fun to be part of.
Yeah, and have a great day, mate.
Yeah, and you. Cheers.